Now, in a way, Anurag, we understood how distribution is supposed to work. Our product didn't have the market fit to utilize that distribution. We understood how the product is supposed to work through the service. Now we're trying to mesh the two.
What is a bridge fund?
Bridge fund is like, I need money to survive from this stage to this stage, so I'm not raising a lot of money and I'm not diluting a lot of equity. In total, my company has generated over 1.1 crore in grant funding.
Okay, that is a lot.
That's a lot.
Are there any grant names or programs that you can just dish out?
Nidhi Prayas, Meti Tide 2.0, Startup India Seeds. Our motto is innovate to enable, and our core thesis is essentially help people heal better, move better, and rehabilitate better. In the simplest essence, replace plaster casts with something like this.
As well as synthetic?
Plaster, synthetic, anything that is currently used today that makes your life worse, with something like this. So these are of course flat. These get heated with a hot air gun or with hot water, and it can be custom molded to your hand.
This is so easy.
It's done.
This is so easy.
Right? Let me see if I can manage it. Sarvana, my fingers are too fat for this. Can you do that? Yeah, my fingers are too fat. So this is essentially an exoskeleton. So its first purpose is to do this flexion extension.
I look like Iron Man. I just wanted to stop you and say that. Hello everyone, I am Anurag Trivedi, co-founder of Everything Startups, also known as Startup with Anurag on Instagram, and I'm spending a day at Create Labs. Here with me is Amartya Gupta, one of the 3 co-founders. I'm just going to understand how the work is done, mithril casts are made. I want to see it in action. I want to see the 3D printers that you are currently selling in the market. It's just going to be exciting day. I just want to see it all in action. Can you do a bit of a walkthrough for me?
Let's do that. Hi everyone, I'm pretty camera shy, so please forgive me if I don't keep looking at the lens. But welcome to Create Labs. This is one of the production areas. It's an oven that we use to make thermoformed splints, and we'll get into that in a bit. So this of course is our reception. That's our logo. Ta-da! Our motto is innovate to enable, and our core thesis is essentially help people heal better, move better, and rehabilitate better. So what we're trying to do is, in the simplest essence, replace plaster casts with something like this. So
as well as synthetic?
Plaster, synthetic, anything that is currently used today that makes your life worse, with something like this. So these are of course flat. These get heated with a hot air gun or with hot water, and it can be custom molded to your hand. And we of course have a few other splints just ignore the drone. So this also is like a replacement. If you've had a hand fracture, you'll be wearing something like this. This is just a walkway. Here we get into the storeroom. This is where we store a lot of our splints. Please don't show it to our ISO auditors. When they come, it's super clean, but right now it is the way it is.
Can you tell me about this story, which was sort of a classic founder's mistake to stock all of this?
Yeah, so when you know how it is, right? You build a product where engineers turn to businessmen. So we've literally had a 4-year MBA in the process, and we've not graduated yet. So we made the classic mistake of, we built a product, we showed it to doctors, they were like, yeah boss, this is great. We thought, okay, every doctor in India is going to buy our product. So we took like 40 lakhs, spent it in just like, this was from our startup capital, spent it in manufacturing. For 2 years that lay as dead stock. And now over the last year and a half, we've been clearing it out because we finally realized how to sell this product. So these are some of the things that we make. For example, this is called an ankle foot orthosis. You will wear this instead of wearing a plaster cast if you've had a foot fracture. It's also used in neuro cases. I won't get into too many technicalities. It's just better than plaster. All right, let's head up. So this is another production room of ours. Here you have Vijay and Divya. They're part of our production team. Guys, you can say hi.
Hi Vijay. Hi Divya.
So basically this is like your finishing area. We put the padding on the splints. These are one of the splints we make. All the padding is attached. The splints are cleaned and everything over here. And then it goes onto the rack for dispatch over here. We're trying to modernize, so we put a display up, but our Raspberry Pi doesn't work anymore because we broke it.
Okay.
And so essentially this is what happened. That's where I sit. That's my cabin.
Okay. I have made it a bit messy with my stuff.
Okay. Nobody likes coming into my cabin because they get shouted at.
Okay.
Don't laugh, Vijay.
And what's happening inside there?
So this is one of our production zones. We used to have about 8 3D printers in here.
Okay.
But slowly we're phasing out of 3D printing for our production methods. It's great for prototyping. So you can see this place is a mess. So right now we're left with 1, 2, 3, 4 printers.
Okay.
And the story behind these printers is really interesting because we didn't have money to buy like 3-4 lakh rupees worth of printers, industrial grade printers, right? So being engineers, what we're like, okay, we'll buy the cheap Chinese ones and we'll upgrade the shit out of it. So if you see this has basically become a Frankenstein of a printer. We've upgraded all the core components, changed the motherboard, got it running a new firmware, put a direct drive extruder. And we ended up spending as much as we would spend on an industrial grade printer. So, but we made it.
So this is I would say a second classic founder's mistake.
Second classic founder's
Yeah,
mistake.
just get the cheap ones from China.
Yeah, don't cheap out, man. It's not worth it in the long run.
Yeah.
But it taught us a lot, like you learn from your mistakes. And it
Yeah.
taught us a lot in the process. But yeah, so this one is getting sold. So if anybody wants to buy a printer, please pick it up. This one.
And so this is exactly a 3D printer that can print mithril casts.
Yes. So if you want to see one of our printed pieces,
Yeah.
you can see it here. So these are printed. Now this takes about 4 to 5 hours to print on these machines.
Okay.
And which is exactly why we stopped printing, because now we shifted to injection molding,
Okay.
where I get like a shot every 20-30 seconds. So now instead of 4 hours, it takes me 20-30 seconds, and it's manufactured at a fraction of the cost. But that's what happens with scale, right? Earlier we were selling about 100 to 200 units of this, so 3D printing made sense.
Okay.
But injection molding we shifted to because now we're selling thousands of units. So yeah, classic. It's I wouldn't say it's a mistake. I would say it's a learning,
Yeah.
right?
Every mistake is a
Every mistake is a
yeah.
learning. Yeah. Corny uncle dialogues.
Yeah. We are getting there.
So here we have a common workspace. This area was built out by us with the primary intention of me sitting over there and overlooking my kingdom.
Okay.
But now I don't sit there anymore.
Yeah.
So yeah, so
It will be easier to shout from here at people.
it will be, yeah.
Yeah.
But the problem is when I want to have a private shouting session, I don't have a glass partition. So
Feeling that you have one of those a lot, the private shouting sessions.
that's why I took the cabin.
Yeah.
Guys, I'm not a monster founder. Tauqib, I've never shouted at you, no? Yeah, thanks.
You can be honest. You can be honest. It's being recorded.
So yeah, so this is Tauqib. Generally, this place is
Hi,
full.
Tauqib.
So yeah, this is an R&D space. So you can see some of the projects we're working on over here. This is an elbow exoskeleton. So one of the issues that we kept bumping into was, we deal with the immobilization part.
Yeah.
Yes, you've had a fracture. Yes, it's healed. But when you get in a little more into the neuro side of things, right, where somebody's had like a stroke or some nerve injury, the immobilization is just one small part of their journey. But what they really look at is the future mobility. So the doctors kept asking us, guys, can you make something which enables me to do this up and down motion, right? Can I give this to a patient, and can this device augment their abilities? So
Can you show it in action?
yeah, absolutely.
As a lot of you may know, I had a cast put on this hand, and we are going to try this on the other hand that hasn't ever broken. Touch wood. And I just want to see it in action because I am literally the customer who has gone through this pain point. Was really, really irritating, and especially the part where itching happens and you can't reach these areas with the cast of plaster casts and synthetic casts. I had a synthetic cast, I think,
Yes.
and the older ones were the ones that were made out of gypsum.
Yes.
Okay, the white ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, this is for your right hand. It's still a proto. It might be a little rough around the edges.
I think something similar to this is what I would want for my wrist immobilization.
Got it. Is it pinching or?
No, it's fine. I remember when my full cast was removed, I was unable to move this joint.
It's very stiff.
And it's very painful.
So this is essentially an exoskeleton. So its first purpose is to do this flexion extension.
I look like Iron Man. I just wanted to stop you and say that.
You should try on this one. So
Yeah.
Satyam had put on. Let me see if I can bring that into frame. Tauqib, just
Okay, it could be possible for you to build that suit, right?
possible.
Yeah.
It's already being done by so many people.
Yeah.
So this was the earlier model, and we had built it to look like an Iron Man hand, but it's connected to this big box. So now it's been made completely wireless with this, and as you can see,
Oh.
right, you can keep your hand completely dead, and you can
Okay.
do speed control. So now it's slower. You can
And
do
it
extend-
has a lot of power. Because I did try to stop it and I
You
could
can
not.
take up to 15 kgs of load at the
Okay.
wrist. You can play with it. So you can adjust the speed, and you can.
No, I don't want to mess up this hand again, so I'll let you do that.
Okay, so right now flex, it flexes it up. Also, Anurag's hand is completely dead.
Yeah.
He's not doing anything. We've also put load cell over here. So in the future, if somebody, like you want it to be assistive.
Yeah.
So like in my elbow, I have very little power.
Okay.
But I can move it up and down, but I can't lift any weight with it.
Okay.
Right? So you can wear this and you can just, the device will assist you in lifting weight.
Yeah.
So it becomes an augmentation.
That is what I was going to ask. Can you cheat your way in gym with something like this?
Yeah, actually. You can, but the gym ones are simpler. Those are called passive exos. So you'll have like springs and everything attached.
Okay.
So there's this really cool company in the US which is making an exo for the lower limb.
Okay.
And it's got not very big motors and actuators, small ones, but it's for like military grade exoskeletons to help soldiers build it, like increase their endurance.
All right.
Increase the
I think I've seen a video too around
yeah. Lockheed is developing one, few other companies. But we are primarily looking at rehabilitation. And the core idea is, why do you want to spend lakhs and crores for an exo?
Yeah.
Like if I'm selling this, we're making this for a price point of 15K.
Okay.
Somebody can buy it. Somebody
Yeah.
can use it continuously,
Yeah.
right? That's the thing about frugal innovation.
Yeah.
So yeah,
This is awesome.
should I take it off or do you want
Yes.
to keep playing with it?
No. Tell me this, because I wanted to ask you a question. I will just ask it right now.
Sure.
Where I was a week ago with the plaster put on my hand for 6 weeks. In hindsight, those 6 weeks were not so much of a problem, because when I started physio, when the pain really happened because of immobilization, because I had an injury, then I had to get a surgery done and 6 weeks of immobilization.
Yeah.
So this area is stuck.
Yeah.
Like even right now, I can't bend my wrist completely.
Yeah.
So you have mitral casts for when you need the cast, for the 6 to however
Yeah.
many weeks you need to recuperate from the injury. But now to assist with physio, are there any things you're working on?
Yeah, absolutely. So let
Because I think this comes closer to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Tauqib, if you can do me a favor, can you bring one sugar tom brace? So what generally happens is, now your injury specifically was an injury to the TFCC,
Yeah.
which is soft tissue over here,
Yeah.
surrounds your wrist, right? And because you had a surgery, I'm assuming it was a grade 3 or grade 4 tear,
Yeah, high grade tear.
high grade tear,
Yeah.
right? So the first thing is, immobilization is paramount, because you want to prevent inflammation, you want to prevent anything from going out of place,
Yeah.
right? So let it heal by itself to some degree, and then you start with your physio.
Okay.
Now, if you're asking, in the physio stage, is there something which you can use to ensure that your exercises and your rep counts are getting matched, your effort is decreasing, right?
Yeah.
100%. That is what we're working on.
Okay.
So the biggest problem that you have in hospitals now is that there are too many patients and there are very few physiotherapists. Right? For a 300-bedded hospital, you have like 20 therapists.
Oh, yeah.
So what we're trying to do with this is, our idea is that when a patient comes in, when they're in their wards, right, this does something called continuous passive motion. Continuously move your elbow up and down,
Okay.
right?
Even when they're sleeping?
Even when they're sleeping.
Yeah.
So CPM is a methodology of therapy which is employed in certain conditions.
What is CPM?
Continuous passive motion.
Okay.
It's employed in certain conditions, right? Particularly neuro or any condition which requires repetitive motion of a joint just to ensure mobility.
Okay.
Otherwise, stiffness starts setting in, right?
Yeah.
You want to increase people's range of motion. So the thing about this is, I can control. If I want just flexion till here, I can control it.
Yeah.
I can do from here to here 100 times.
Okay.
Right? You can buy 10 of these devices, and one physio or two physio can put this on 10 patients.
At the same time.
At the same time. So their productivity rates have increased.
Yeah.
Then with this, you have data logging. I can measure what is the range of motion improvements in a patient.
Yeah.
I can generate reports from it.
Okay.
So when a patient is there in the hospital for, let's say, 1 to 2 weeks,
Yeah.
I can get an exact data-driven analysis of what their improvements are. That
Okay.
is the first thing. The second thing is, if I have 10 patients and 2 physios, instead of stretching them to their max in terms of their manpower limit,
Yeah.
let them use technology to
Yeah.
optimize and become more efficient.
And is there a complementing app or a platform that goes with this?
Yeah, absolutely. We developed an app.
The one that you have right now. So tell me this, if it can do it right now, or if in the future it is going to do. So I'll imagine myself as a physiotherapist in a hospital with 10 patients who need my assistance.
Yeah.
And obviously the hospital is overrun with skeletal or soft tissue injuries, and I am as a physio is responsible to take care of these 10 people. So could there be just a tablet right in front of me? I would be sitting in my office and I can monitor each patient individually. Someone needs a full flexion.
Yeah.
It's called flexion, right?
Yeah, flexion extension. Right?
Flexion extension.
Extension, flexion.
Okay. And this is, I think, superannuation?
No. So supination, it's like you're holding a bowl of soup.
Okay.
Right? So supination,
Supination.
pronation.
Pronation.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And this can be done right now.
It
What
can
do you
be
have?
done.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're developing this platform for that very purpose.
Okay.
Because now in most therapy hospitals,
Yeah.
if you're a patient and you're admitted there, you'll have a caretaker.
Yeah.
Before, you'll be doing therapy twice a day under the supervision of a physiotherapist. So there are two kinds of therapy. One is just continuously stretching and making you do repetitive motions to get your body back into the groove of doing things, improve your range of motion, etc.
Yeah.
Second thing is activity-driven motions.
Okay.
Right. So let's say you've injured your wrist. There are a group of therapists called occupational therapists. What they'll do is they'll make you perform certain activities of daily life so that you can build something called neuroplasticity. So it helps you remember again how to perform certain motions.
Okay.
But doing both simultaneously is impossible. So what they do is your caretaker, the therapist will teach your caretaker stretch in this manner and all. For half an hour before therapy, the caretaker will do the needful. Then you will go to the therapy center for activity-driven, basically to perform your basic activities and everything. Activity-driven therapy. So what this device intends to do is, like you said, have a tablet. You can program the device with patient-specific protocols, right? Somebody puts the device onto the patient, and then after the device does everything, and you have a report generated. Now, in essence, this technology makes sense, but to put this into the market will take some time because there are a lot of safety features which you have to put in. And this
Regulations and compliances, are there any around this?
Lots.
Lots.
This is a grade 2 medical device.
Oh.
So which means I have to put this under clinical trials. I have to make sure this device is safe to use. I have to do my EMI, EMC testing to make sure all the electronics and mechanical parts are also safe to use. Once it's gone through clinical trial and all these testings, then it is free to sell.
Can you talk a bit about these grades and how do you go about clinical trials if someone was building something similar to this?
Sure. So we started our journey with the mitral splints, right?
Okay.
So if you want to wear this is basically a, you want to wear it? So actually,
This is for left?
this is for right. It's for the same injury that you have.
Okay.
I think the most important thing is you can bathe with this. So
Oh.
you can keep
Oh,
it clean.
you can take a
Yeah,
bath.
it's completely waterproof. It's a little tight. It's a little
A bit easy because it still
Sorry,
hurts.
no worries. I think it's a little tight for you. That's it. So now the most important thing is you can flex your elbow and extend your elbow, but this motion is prevented.
Okay, supination and
Pronation.
pronation.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Right?
because the only reason they had to lock my elbow so that I don't do this.
Absolutely. Because the motion starts from here.
Okay,
But now your hand is free. You can move your elbow up and down,
yeah.
and it's protected completely.
And this is just 3D printed.
No, this one is, we use a mix. So these certain parts, the hinges and all are 3D printed.
Yeah.
These are laser cut, but yeah.
Okay.
It can be 3D printed completely as well. The core thing is, these are cut or printed in flat shapes like this.
Okay.
Now, if I need to print a organic geometry like this, it's very difficult. I'll have to
Okay.
take a scan of your hand and all.
Okay.
Doesn't make sense. So I'll print it as a flat shape, and I'll heat this, and I'll mold it to your hand.
Mold it to my hand.
And I can show you the process later.
Yeah.
So this is a grade 1 device. Because it's a non-measuring, non-sterile, it doesn't go inside your body, none of that. So grade 1 or grade A devices are lowest risk. I just have to make sure the material is safe to use.
Okay.
That we've done. We've done our biocompatibility testings and all. So in India, if the governing body is called CDSCO, right? Grade 1 devices are generally self-registration, which means you go, you register yourself on the portal, and you are now free to sell.
Okay.
And needs to be specifically grade A, non-measuring, non-sterile devices.
Okay. But are there any checks, or is it just registration that you have
Registration is one thing, but you also need to have something called a quality management system,
Okay.
which is where ISO audits come in. So you need to ensure that you are audited by an organization that is registered with the CDSCO,
to go? All right.
just to make sure your quality is in place.
And these are for all grades?
This is ISO audits are standard for all grades.
And how many grades are there?
So it depends on which country you're in. India
Yeah.
has 3 main grades and subgrades below them.
Okay.
Right? So class 1 or class A devices have 2 grades, measuring, non-measuring.
Okay.
Class B devices also have 2 grades. I'm forgetting the
Yeah.
exact details. Then you have class C devices. So class B devices get into like your robotics, right? Your exoskeleton and everything, where you have devices which like actuators, motors, sensors, you're measuring, you have output.
Yeah.
And this becomes really a difficult thing because like I'm having wireless communication. So if somebody's wearing a pacemaker, this may not be suitable
Yeah.
for them to use.
Yeah.
Right? You don't want to have any adverse effects. So this requires more rigor in terms of I need to make sure this is a clinically valid product. It's not that I made something and I'll slap it onto 10 patients
yeah.
and just say it works, right?
And class C would be something
Implants.
when we go to the machine side of things.
Implants.
Implants.
Implants are Class C.
So an MRI machine, is it still
That
class
will also
B?
be Class C.
Yeah.
Right.
All right.
So
So the bigger machines and implants will fall under class C.
Class C.
All right. And everything has to be ISO certified and audited.
Yes.
Audited and then certified.
Yes.
All right.
And I think as you go up the classes, the kind of audits you have to do become more and more stringent.
All right.
This is one of my proudest features of this office. We didn't have enough money to make a drywall. So what you see here are 3D printing filament spools. Because we do a lot of 3D printing, we just stack them one on top of each other and made a drywall ourselves.
Okay.
And to add a little more flair, we put LEDs. That's it.
Okay. This is something you would see in Delhi NCR cafes.
Yeah, no, they
Yeah.
have plants coming out.
Something like a junkyard cafe.
Yeah.
And you can maybe sell this to them.
Sarvana, side project, you want to make some money? Make 3D printing walls. This is our...
What is happening here?
So we're 3D printing a few splints. These are called nasal splints. So if you've had a rhinoplasty surgery or like your nose has been broken, needs to be fixed again, they'll be putting this splint, it'll be molded onto your nose. These are some of our other printers. Right now they're all inactive. This is our newest one. We invested in a Bamboo Labs. If you remember, I said, if you don't skimp out on these things, just buy a good printer and keep it running. This
Yeah.
is our first investment in that.
Okay, and Bamboo Lab is, I would presume, one of the best makers.
It's the best maker, right? It's still new. It's about 2 years.
Hmm.
But what Bamboo Labs has done is, like, you see how slow this one is printing, right?
Yeah.
It's printing at a speed of about 75 mm per second.
Okay.
Bamboo Labs takes it up to 300
Okay.
or 500.
Okay.
So it's incredible. Let me see if I can put a print to show you. So while it
Okay,
starts
so
up,
you have a preset right inside this, right?
yeah, all the files are stored in here.
So all of your design is stored here.
Yeah.
And where does the ink goes?
So this is your filament,
This is my filament.
right? So your filament looks something like this.
Okay.
And this is fed into this thing. It's called the hot end and extruder.
Okay.
So this heats up to like 220 degrees.
Mhm.
Once the material melts, it just deposits it layer by layer. So when we got this office, again, classic founder's mistake. We
Yeah.
spent a lot of money getting good furniture made. Please don't make good furniture. Use the
Okay.
crappiest piece of wood you can find, because at the end of the day, glue stains, burn marks, everything will be on these tables.
Okay.
It breaks my heart to see this, but I mean, it's resulted in good work, right? I mean, if you just look at this, I got these mats and you can just see everything's been drilled through, everything's been burnt,
Yeah.
it's glue all over it. But yeah,
Hashtag engineers use engineered wood. Get the cheapest kind.
get the cheapest kind. Don't get plywood. I mean,
Yeah.
if you can afford it, why not? This is something interesting. We were building a wrist and hand exoskeleton. You saw the
Okay.
thing for the elbow, right?
Yeah.
So this is something where you can slide your fingers through. Of course, this Proto is not doing well right now. Let me see if I can manage it. Salvana, my fingers are too fat for this. Can you bring your hand? Yeah, my fingers are too fat. Well, let me see. It's fitting in. Okay. So essentially, you put this on your hand, and this will do all the motions of your finger flexion, wrist extension, continuous passive or assisted motions. Right now, it's not working, but we're trying to build one for the elbow and one for the wrist and the fingers.
Okay. So this is something that will be used for me.
Yes, this is something that you would have used. Absolutely. So this is our final floor. Here you have your sit out or your sutta corner.
Now you walk me through what's happening
Oh.
here. Is there isn't any IP, right?
No,
Here?
there's no IP. This is just us brainstorming. This is something my dad gave us 2 years into the company. He asked us to show him our books, and we were like, "What are books?" So he made this. In God we believe. Rest all bring data to the table.
Yeah.
So yeah, apart from this, this is a conference room. So the story of this office is very interesting. Earlier, Satyam, my co-founder,
Yeah.
and I wanted to have a warehouse, like a 4,000 to 5,000 square foot warehouse where everything is laid out in front of us. But it's expensive and it's all in the outskirts of the city. I just stumbled upon this property on No Broker. The entry to our lane is not the greatest. So when I was
Yeah.
entering, I was like, where am I? What the f is this
Yeah.
place, right? Am I going to get mugged or something? And then when we came here, I saw the place. This entire building was constructed as an office.
As an
space.
office, yeah.
And it was for this company called Skytech Solutions. And this was the first office they constructed. They're an industrial automation company.
Okay.
And when I met the owner, his first thing was, I really like what you guys are doing. So whatever the rent is and all, I'm here to support you. And when we got that vibe, that feeling of support from him,
Yeah.
we were sold. So, it's a great, we've made it our own space. And I think the conference room is one place which both Satyam and I love, because we can close the door and just discuss without people interrupting us.
Now this is lovely. It's very well lit. It has the atmosphere and ambience, staying motivated. Because
overnight-
in a dingy space with warm lights, I am not sure you can be as productive.
You can't. White
Yeah.
lights are, and natural light is the most. That's
Yeah.
why we've not put this thing,
Any blinds on it,
because
yeah.
we just like the light coming in. We have this beanbag for all-nighters. 3 to 4 people pass out on it. It's quite fun.
Okay.
So this is another whiteboard. If you go through our office, you'll see whiteboards everywhere.
Yeah.
Obsessed with them.
I think it has to do something with people who run labs, because I saw so many whiteboards yesterday as well.
This was a small treat we got for our team, and as you can see, it's become a dining table because there are food stains all over it.
Yeah.
But this is our pantry. So everybody comes for lunch and everything. Then we have birthday parties here. This is
This is very nice.
painting. Again, my dad made it. He didn't know what to do with it, so we became the recycling plant.
Amartya, if I were to come to you right after my surgery was done, because I do not want to get the plaster, which is made of gypsum, because it gets dirty and all, and it looks really awful on your hand. And if I also don't want to get the synthetic cast, because my issue with that was the itching was the worst. To keep my hand clean, and by the time the cast would come off, it will also start smelling from inside, because it's dead skin and all. And getting the dead skin off my hand was a thing I had to constantly do. Put my hand in the warm water. So Mithril makes sure that we avoid all of this, all of the discomfort that comes after your surgery or after your injury.
Yeah.
I think the injury and the surgery should be the worst part, not the recovery.
Sure.
And I think that is what you are trying to do here.
Yeah, absolutely. So, little backstory. Satyam and I studied in Manipal.
Okay.
Like Goa, it's a very humid place.
Yeah.
We saw now when you have people like laborers and all coming in, and their casts are being removed, and when they're in like not the best conditions,
Yeah.
dead skin, you have mold that
Yeah.
grows inside. Some people have maggots growing inside at injury.
There's a possibility of infection that you would not
very high
notice.
possibility of infection. And the thing is, you have set the bone in place, but what happens after?
Yeah.
You're dealing with dead skin, you're dealing with infections, you're dealing with possible maggots or anything inside.
Yeah.
You're dealing, like you said, you have to do a lot of skincare after that, right?
Yeah.
Now, you as somebody with access to resources has the ability to do that,
Yeah.
right? But what if I just need to get back to my job ASAP,
Yeah.
right? These things, you miss out on it.
Yeah.
The second biggest problem is atrophy, muscle loss.
Okay.
Right now, with simple injuries, like you had an injury of the wrist,
Yeah.
but you were immobilized all the way down.
Yeah.
You started getting stiffness over here.
Yeah.
Right. So when we make a splint for that, we ensure that this motion is allowed.
Yeah.
So that when you move it over here, right, your mobility is ensured, and second, you don't have too much atrophy, muscle
Yeah.
loss or weakness that sets in. So that's what we're trying to deal with.
Yeah.
For this. Now, one more thing is, as I show you the process, when you've had an operation, in a lot of cases, a cast is put on, and after a week, the dressing is changed, the cast is removed, and a new fresh plaster slab is applied.
Yeah.
Over the course of an injury, you will change your slab 2 to 3 times.
Yeah.
In a lot of burn cases, in a lot of, distal radius fractures and so on, different conditions are there. Can you use one splint through the entire journey?
No, never.
But here you can.
Okay.
That is the entire premise of this.
Yeah.
You save money, you improve your quality of life,
Yeah.
and overall, your basic experience is just much better, tremendously better. So this is significantly lighter than plaster. It's also 5 times stronger, as we've done our mechanical testing and everything.
Yeah.
You want to get into the process? Of
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And in
So-
the meantime, you start applying this, and we'll keep the conversation going.
Yeah.
But how would you do it exactly?
So we have sizes in this. This is a medium. We have small, medium, large. Right?
Okay.
It's graded. So this medium will fit your hand perfectly. If you keep your hand here, you can see that the flat splint fits on like this.
Okay.
It's transparent, so it's difficult to see. But we made it transparent for a reason, because we don't want too much attention coming to it.
All right.
Right? Now this is a heat gun. So you can use a hot air gun or hot water, both work.
So it's a bit time sensitive.
It is, yeah. So it is hot, but you can see it's completely malleable. You can play with it a bit. Right?
Nice.
You just have to wear this because it is hot. Just pass your thumb through the thing. Right? And all we have to do after that is, I place this here. Hold it down. Hold it for about 20 to 30 seconds. And start taking its shape. So this is called a thermoplastic material.
Yeah.
Essentially,
Should I also hold it like this?
thank you, that's perfect. And this thing I can reheat and remold almost 20 times.
Okay.
So once it takes a shape, I can again heat it, flatten it out, and then I can remold it again.
Just on the off chance that I had my hand position a bit wrong,
Yeah.
and it should be
one of the biggest things is swelling. So
Okay.
when you at the point of injury, the swelling is very high.
Okay.
But after 2 to 3 weeks, the swelling goes down.
Yeah.
Right. So that's when they change the plaster.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
over here, what happens? You can just adjust this. We had a very interesting case recently. There was a cricket player. There's a thing called Ranji Trophy in Karnataka.
Yeah.
Right. So he fractured his fifth metacarpal. They didn't want to put a plaster cast on him. There you go. We're done. You can take this.
Oh, it's done.
Yeah, that's it. So he fractured his fifth metacarpal.
Okay.
And he had training happening in about 2 weeks. So the option was either wear a plaster cast, get it removed, go for the trials, and then again put the plaster again. Instead, the doctor was like, let's just use something like this. So we have a splint which goes like this. I'll share the pictures with you. You can have a look. Still a little warm. You can just, that's it. You're done.
That's it. And we lock it through straps.
I'll just show you that as well.
I want to understand how cheap does this become for the end consumer, which is me? Because I'll give you some context. When I had the full synthetic cast put, which locked my elbow, it costed me 3,000 at a private clinic in Bangalore. And when I went to Goa, where things are much more expensive because the frequency of patients coming in is lesser, just the shorter cast costed me, synthetic cast costed me 5,000.
Okay.
Now, if I were to go to a doctor who gives this as a solution, how much would they charge me on an average? Because I understand they also have their own margins, and you as a business will have to maintain your margin. But at the end consumer stage, because I as a consumer would not care about how much does it charge the doctor or how much does it cost you to make this.
That's an interesting question. So like right now we're selling this product in places like AIMS and ESI hospitals, and also we're selling in like government hospitals, right?
Yeah.
The MRP of this product, so if you are buying it at a hospital, no matter where you are, the MRP is going to be 2,000.
Okay.
So flat rate, you as a patient will be paying 2,000.
Again, cheaper.
Much.
30% cheaper.
Yeah.
Than what I got.
Yeah. And for private hospitals, so now of course I have to give my margin, my discounts to hospitals and all. They'll be at a cheaper price, so they can accommodate their margins. But we have priced it at a point where we realize, boss, you go to Manipal hospitals at night, they'll charge you surcharge for evening. So instead of paying it, during the day you'll be paying $2,500. At night you'll be paying $5,000 there.
This is so easy.
It's done.
This is so easy.
Right.
You have to move into the frame again.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
So when they would have put plaster on you, it would have taken about 10 minutes to set.
Yeah.
You can't move your hand at all. It gets really hot inside, right? Because it's an exothermic reaction.
And can I tell you something immediately? When I had the synthetic cast put, and in that session or in that phase of my recovery, I had to do this movement. It was impossible with the synthetic cast. And this is not, obviously, this video is never a promotion, but that is what I feel.
Yeah.
Because I could have done this and my supination and pronation would have been much easier with this.
Yeah.
I love this.
This is yours. You can
Yeah.
put it to your hand now.
Yeah. So there's a bit of exclusivity that comes with it, right? Because it's like a one-on-one thing.
Yeah.
It's not
It's
just
completely custom. It's molded to your hand, literally, right? And what we found out is a lot of times the patients were like, "Sir, what do I do? What do I do? Sorry, what do I do after my injury is healed?" We're like, "You can make it like a cup holder. You can put it on your shelf. It will look nice." So people are putting it on their mantle. We keep getting pictures from people like injury healed, sir, and then they should send a picture of this on top of their TV.
okay.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And as
Sort
a bonus for you, we've made something called a DRUJ splint, which is
So this is post-op or post-injury, and then we have something to support rehabilitation. Yeah.
So pre-op, post-op, at the point of trauma care, during rehabilitation, you can use the same product throughout.
All right.
Is that fine?
Yeah. No, it's fine.
That's it. We let it set. The other problem with cloth, right now you're wearing a cloth splint, right?
Yeah.
As you sweat.
So where is it?
You came to Create Labs and the old splints are left behind. So that's fun. Yeah, that's done. And now we'll just put the strap on. Oops,
Okay.
Wrong terminology. The entire point of this was to make it affordable because India is an incredibly cost-sensitive market, man.
Yeah, and that is why I keep asking this question, because for a change to happen to an industry that has been like the way it has been, Indian consumer would be very apprehensive
Yeah.
about this change and the effectiveness of it.
Dude, believe it or not, it's the rich people who do more bargaining.
No, I agree because see, they are rich because they want to get their money worth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've had guys popping in with Mercedes asking for $100 off, $200 off. It's ridiculous.
No, always get it. Always bargain. That I think we should never get out of the middle class mentality. I think that is the way to generational wealth. I'll tell you another thing, and I just don't want to keep endorsing or promoting this thing because with the brace, it will get wet if I go into the water. But this won't.
This one.
Yeah, because in post recovery, my doctors have told me that I can go for swimming. But with the brace, I would still want to have something. Yeah. But the brace will keep on getting wet. And then I can't wear a wet brace again. So I'll have to try it. And
right,
this,
you have to have 2 braces at least.
this eliminates all of it.
Yeah.
And I love this. And I'll be wearing this. And I think somewhere down the line you will do custom designs like printing and all that.
Or we can put you on, like if, for example, you're in Goa, you're like, boss, I need this.
Bro, you're not in.
Oh, sorry. If you're in Goa and you call me and say, boss, I need this print. I saw it on your website. I have the option where I can put your name on it. I can print it in some color that you want. But like if I'm selling it in a hospital, then I have standardized colors. But if you want a custom, then I'll do it for you.
Yeah.
That's not a problem.
All right. Okay. Let's head out.
Let's go.
Because we're heading out.
Yes.
Spending a day at Create Labs outside Create Labs. No, I just want to understand how you grew up, where you grew up, how was your relationship with your parents. No, I'll just let you start.
Sure. So, I mean, my dad was in the army. But we didn't move around a lot because I was quite a late child. So when I was in the 3rd grade, we settled down in Bangalore. But the one thing which I remember, like with my parents is, particularly my dad, was that he just loved building things. So if you come to my house now, most of the furniture is stuff that he's built by himself. And he's designed and everything. My dad's an electrical engineer in the army. Same with my mom, like she just loved doing her own thing. So the 2 of them, as I mentioned earlier, I think like, they were artists. They are artists. They make murals and stuff. So I've grown up in a very creative household, and there was never ever any real restriction that my parents put that you have to do this or you have to do this in your life. Let me explore. For the longest time, you know, I used to be obsessed with planes, and I wanted to join the Air Force. I just it's not Deshbhakt or anything. I just wanted to fly fighter jets.
Yeah.
But then in 11th I got...
Was this also an expectation from you to join?
No, they didn't want me to join. They didn't want me to join the services because they said that you won't survive there.
Yeah.
But one thing I loved was just the fact that I could fly planes, and I just really liked the discipline that you know you see over there. Which is weird coming from an army kid because you'd expect me to be disciplined. But yeah, so I got specs in the 11th grade and any chance of flying a fighter jet went out the window. Yeah. But then my thought process was like, okay, then I'll just do engineering as every other science kid does. And there was no way I was getting into IITs or anything. So I just put my mind on, okay, what are the 2... And I didn't want to stay in Bangalore. I wanted to get out of here because I was kind of sick of the place.
So you grew up here?
I grew up here. 3rd to 12th grade was here in Bangalore.
And before that?
Before that, I used to move around. Pune, Jhansi, Srinagar.
Because of your dad's transfers?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I said, like I've always had a maker mindset. When I was a kid, my dad would get me like remote control cars and all. I'd take them apart. I'd convert a car to a boat and put it in like a plastic container and just change the motors and change the chassis. Just do dumb like that. Like 8th grade, my friend and I, we saw this YouTube video for a line following robot, so we just built it. Okay. From some scraps, and we went and bought the transistors and all. So we used to do all this stuff. So science was something that just came very naturally. I never had to put an effort. I loved figuring out how things worked. Okay. So the pull towards engineering was very natural, and I picked mechanical because it just sounded cool. I didn't really have any idea. Now when I think about it, I wish I took CS or mechatronics because the world's moving in that direction. But I ended up in Manipal because... But
this was also 2016, I think.
15, yeah.
2015, okay.
Yeah. I ended up in Manipal because the only 2 places I looked at were BITS and Manipal. Again, I think like that's also a thing about privilege that I had, that I could opt to limit my choices to these 2. BITS, I didn't get the course I wanted, and when I saw Manipal's campus, I was just like, this is amazing. I was quite fortunate to study there. But my love for aviation didn't go away. So in college, I joined this aero modeling team. We called ourselves Aero MIT. And we used to build planes and drones, and I actually understood the science behind aerodynamics, aircraft design. I was doing that master students do in their thesis, right? We were doing complex mesh geometries that we were running simulations on and everything. It was very interesting. And as a team, we had, like every college project is there are competitions that we go for. So we used to go for this competition in the States called SAE Aero Design. And my team would perform pretty well. We'd always come back with some podium prize. And I think at that point we were like amongst the most recognized teams in India, collegiate teams in India. I had a great time, and what I loved about MIT was the work ethic. You know, like my classes would end if I had a half day at like 12, and I'd be in the workshop from like 1 p.m. till 4 a.m. the next day. I lived in the workshop. I just loved every second I spent, and I just loved the fact that I was in a place where I had materials and tools and like-minded people where I could build stuff.
Yeah.
It was great.
And Satyam was also in Manipal.
Satyam was also in Manipal. So Satyam and I are in the same batch, but we never spoke to each other until 4th year.
Okay.
I thought he was one weirdo, okay. So see him chasing this one girl all the time. And I used to make fun of him.
Yeah.
But there's a lot more to Satyam than meets the eye. Satyam was on a different tangent. He, because he's not here, I'll speak on his behalf. He worked in this biomedical lab. I think he was also bitten by the same bug. He didn't want to stick with regular curriculum.
Yeah.
And Manipal is a beautiful place to go and just explore things because there's so much opportunity there, man. Even now, like it's expensive, I get it, but like I would highly recommend if parents want to send their kids to a good engineering college, Manipal is great. So yeah, Satyam he started working in the biomedical lab, and this guy built, like with his college friends in second year of college, built a full-fledged lower body exoskeleton.
Okay.
Just because these guys were interested, you know, like some master students took up the project, decided it was too hard. So the prof, because he had nothing else to do, gave the project to Satyam and his friends, and they built it out. And they won a DRDO competition also with it. And like this guy has worked on a plethora of different biomed projects. And so for me, I reached a point in Aero MIT where I realized I really hated the math and the academic rigor behind design and everything. I loved problem solving, but from a very different perspective. I didn't like to go deep into the engineering intricacies, and that was something that really challenged my inner beliefs of what I thought I should be as an engineer. But
was it only for maths or was it also for physics? Because what you do also requires physics, right?
It requires. So it just depends on how. I'm a very intuitive problem solver. I'm not a very analytical problem solver. I go by feel a lot, right? And a lot of times my intuition is proved right, and that's what I realized. I'm very bad at the analytical aspect of things. So my intuition told me that if I was gearing up for a master's in aerospace, and my intuition told me this is not a great idea, because I thought I would hate it. I'm so happy.
But do you hate it now?
I do.
You still do?
Yeah, when I see, dude, I was on a path where, like I had a decent GPA, I had great extracurriculars, published some papers. I would have gotten into a decent, university for my masters. Like as most of my teammates from Aero MIT got into extremely good universities. I'm sure, like if you take their trajectory and trace mine out, it would have been similar. But when I see the stuff they're doing nowadays, right? I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying I wouldn't like it.
Okay.
Like I would have probably been on a path. So my best friend from college, his name was Brian. And I remember in third year I took the same electives he took because I was like, Brian's a smart one, so I'm just going to follow him. Did a thermals minor. I got a D in that, and I realized I hated this. After that, I stopped following Brian. So when Brian was going for his aerospace master, I was like, this might not be a very good idea.
You've got burnt.
Yeah, I got burnt and I learned. Then I did one internship in IISc.
What is that?
IISc, Indian Institute of Science.
Okay.
Where I was working in the biomechanics lab. And I loved what I saw. I loved these. So I was working on computational fluid dynamics of arterial blood flow. I was just creating simulations and generating models to analyze blood flow for aneurysm generation. Pretty dry topic. It was incredibly interesting, but I hated the work. But I did it. So I realized I can do this work. I'm good at it, but I don't enjoy it. Then I saw the other guys. There were some dudes from NIT Trichy over there who were working on some very interesting product design things. They were using compliant systems to make compliant prosthetic hands and everything. And this is back in like 2014 when these things were still pretty new in the Indian start. Like now a lot of startups are doing this, but that time it was still pretty new. I loved it. I was like, this is amazing. So it piqued my interest. I was like, let me check out biomedical. It seems like there are interesting problems to solve here. When the time came for my, like, you know, in your engineering 8th semester, you have to do a thesis. I had a few opportunities. I got one internship in Pondicherry where we were working on hydroponics. I got one internship in...
I'm very interested in that.
It's very interesting.
Yeah.
I got one internship in Iceland to work on GIS.
What is GIS?
This thing, Geographical Interface Systems.
And what is it?
Information Systems, my bad, sorry.
So is it something that facilitates GPS?
Yeah,
Okay.
sort of. It's like surveying and everything.
Okay.
I hope I got it right. I might be wrong. It's been a very long time since I thought about it.
I'll look into
Yeah,
it.
please, if I'm wrong, just cut it out.
Yeah. No, I'll put it and I'll put the correct information.
Please. Yeah, so long story short, I got interested in biomedical systems and I started asking around in Manipal because so Manipal, you have your college MIT, then you have Medical College KMC, you have a dental college, you have so many different colleges, right? It's a university town. Started asking around in college, I was like, is there any biomedical related project that's happening? And that's when I found that one of the profs told me that most of the projects are full or closed, but there's this dude Satyam who's working with the orthopedic department in KMC to make prosthetic hands for children.
All right.
I was like, is this the same Satyam we used to make fun of? And then one day I saw him happily walking out of the university gate and I called to him and I was like, boss, are you doing these projects? He's like, yeah, I am. I was like, can I do it with you? And I just remember looking in his eyes. He's like, why the f does this guy want to do this?
Yeah.
I should have taken that as a warning. But, sorry, bad Bangalore roads. Yeah. And that's the start of, that is the real inception of Create Labs.
This is what year?
This is 2015? Yes,
2015. No, so 2015 is when you started college.
Oh, my bad. Sorry, 2019.
Yeah, 2019.
Yeah. So we started working together in 2019. So it purely, I just loved the concept that I am working with a doctor to solve a real world problem. It was very tactile, you know, like I could go talk to the patients, interact with them, understand their pain points. I could make something that would make their lives better. Found that incredible.
Yeah.
So the first 6 months was great. This was my first exposure to 3D printing. Yeah, in about 6 months, we made about 10 prosthetic hands that we designed from scratch for children with different, you know, like when we say congenital anomalies, it means like it's from birth, right? So they're born with like either they don't have a hand, like they don't have fingers on their wrist. They don't have, it's called transradial amputations where half of the hand is just not there. Not cut off, just by birth it's not there. So making prosthetic limbs for them, very interesting. Out of the 10 we made, only 2 worked.
Okay.
And that was, now when I look back, I'm like, that's incredible that we made it work. Because in 6 months with zero knowledge, we did this.
And were these 3D printers provided by Manipal?
University, yeah, university printers, yeah. That's what I'm saying, dude. Manipal was a great environment. Like you pay a lot, but if you go out there and ask for something, they give it to you. It's very nice. Anyway,
so this professor making the introduction and then you meeting Satyam outside the campus, then getting started on this, and then in the next 6 months you are building prosthetics.
Yeah.
So would I be right if I call this the inflection point you had towards creating Create Labs?
Yes.
And
it was a start, definitely.
And when did this really go to step 0? Okay, we are starting this
so that
venture.
We'll have to push forward about a year after we finished our engineering.
Okay, so what happened in this year?
So let's say 2019 Jan to like May, we were doing our thesis project. We finished our thesis, both of us were wondering, okay, what next? It was at this time that in Manipal, there were some exchange students who came from the Netherlands, from the University of Maastricht.
Yeah.
And the prof, the orthopedic surgeon we were working with, he asked us, guys, if you are interested in staying here for a few more months, do you want to do some research with the groundwork you have already done? You can publish some papers. We were like, okay, you know what, fine, this sounds good. We also weren't financially independent, right?
Yeah.
So we started working with one startup where we were getting a small stipend. And what we also started doing was we got a fellowship to support our research projects. It was called the Nidhi EIR, Entrepreneur and Residence Fellowship.
Okay.
So for the EIR, I took the prosthetics project and Satyam took the splints project. So that is when, like, you know, so when we were doing all this 3D printing in the hospital, this conversation came up of, can you 3D print splints? So we started playing with this idea. The doctors started sending us cases. We started seeing that instead of putting plaster, they were sending patients to us to put 3D printed splints.
Okay.
We found that very interesting. So we figured, okay, now if we're staying in Manipal for 1 more year, we have to make some money because we don't want to depend on our parents. So we got this fellowship. EIR fellowship is paying us about 30K a month.
Okay.
And we also
it's called Nidhi EIR.
Nidhi EIR.
Is it like a recurring thing, or is it what? Was this a one-time thing when you were in college?
No. Anybody can get it. This is actually by DST, Department of Science and Technology.
Okay.
It's a great this thing. So like there are a lot of organizations that have launched EIR programs.
Yeah.
Right. Nidhi EIR was the first one by DST, which I still think is a great platform. Because it pushes you to think like a startup.
Okay.
See, when I got Nidhi EIR, I just wanted to make some money, and my project was there, so I knew I'd meet the requirements, right? And if I'm being completely candid, the profs we were working with were on the panel that, accepted or denied the project, so we knew we'd get it. So you would say that the thesis was when biomedical became a part of my life, and Nidhi EIR was when startup became a part of my life.
Okay.
So we got this fellowship, we completed this research with the exchange students, we published a few papers, went to Bulgaria. So one of the students was Bulgarian, so we wanted to visit her, so we found a conference in Bulgaria, went there, published the paper, and then we chilled there for about a week and a half with her. It was fun. Then the work started. So the next year was basically us finishing up our fellowships and just writing, completing research, because the one thing that really motivated me and Satyam was the fact that a lot of the projects that we did in school, in college, right, ended at that point. It was just a project. There was no application. It would just be on the shelf. This is one of the most frustrating things for Satyam in his life, was that all the projects he worked on either ended it as a research paper. Oh my God. Is this a school bus? Yeah, it's a school bus. My bad. Yeah, it ended either as a research paper or it ended as a patent. Nobody was taking and commercializing it. Nobody, like, you build this project with so much gusto, that, I'm going to impact these communities and all, but nobody was doing it. So we also figured, we're like, okay, let's not just make a project, put it on our CV, let's at least publish some papers. So that was our thought process. Then came 2020. So we were in Manipal till October 2020. That was a point when, like, in May of 2020, Satyam and I, we wanted to go for our masters. So he was looking for some internships in renewable energies, and I was looking at doing a master's in product design, because by that time we'd built up a decent resume.
Yeah.
But in 2020, COVID hit. I'll tell you my COVID story. It's hilarious. Both of us got COVID in the first wave.
Okay.
So COVID hit, and then at that point, nobody was taking interns, right? You couldn't go outside for an internship. And for masters, it just didn't make sense. Why will I spend like 60 lakhs or 70 lakhs on a master's education if I'm going to do it from Bangalore?
Yeah. Is it that expensive?
Dude, now it's like 1 crore if you want to go to the States. 1 to 1.2 CR.
And what are these colleges that are charging this much?
I was looking at Ivy. I was looking at things like Stanford, MIT.
Okay, so this is still outside India.
Outside India. I'm not looking at India. Yeah. Because it's part of the fantasy. I want to go outside, see what life is like. Anyway. So.
And why did you not go ahead and do it? Just because it did not make sense financially?
No, it was COVID.
Okay.
So if I got into a university, I would be sitting in Bangalore and study.
Yeah.
I wouldn't know when I wouldn't know when this pandemic would end. I wouldn't know when I'd end up going there. So even though I'm sitting in Bangalore, I'm still spending the same tuition. Made zero sense.
Yeah.
I'm going abroad for my masters to experience that.
And Satyam had the same plans.
Satyam didn't want to do a master's. He wanted to get some internships or
renewable energy.
Yeah. He wanted to go and explore.
So he just wanted to work and get done. I think he was done with education at this point.
he was done with education. Yeah.
Okay.
So both of us, our plans, they just got tabled because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And that's when I remember, this was May 2020. Satyam came to me. Both of us were just sitting. We were like, boss, what are we going to do now? And he came to me and he's like, dude, do you want to sell the splints? I was like, what do you mean? He's like, dude, doctors are using it, people like it. Do you want to just start a company and commercialize it?
Do you just want to work on the project we were working on in college?
Do you want to just take this and just see what we can do? Because what he realized was, there is a definite demand. People are seeing value.
Yeah.
Right? And there are people like us who know how to make this now.
Yeah.
All we have to do is bridge the gap. And in my head, I was like, no, this is simple enough. And I spoke to my parents, I spoke to a few people who, you speak to for advice and all. And I remember one thing this one relative of mine told me. She said, Amartya, the point of going to a master's is not to go there and figure out what questions you want answered.
Yeah.
But if you can figure out what questions you want answers to and then go for a master's, your time is much, well spent. That really stuck in my head.
No, that's a very nice perspective.
It was really good.
Because I would have needed it if I were going to masters.
Right. Like a lot of people go to their masters because it's a checkpoint, not because they want to answer some question about their life.
Yeah.
Right. I hope, okay, while you're taking videos of the road, I hope I'm not breaking any rules, otherwise some traffic.
No, I'm not taking any videos.
Okay. Anyway, so then all this happened, and that's when the Nidhi EIR kicked in. So when Satyam brought up that question, he was like, do you want to do this? Another important thing is that we took like 3 to 4 months to deliberate. It wasn't like an on-the-spot, Eureka, let's do this.
Yeah.
Because if you're starting a company with somebody, you really have to vet. You may know that person from birth, okay? But you have to vet that desire to start up.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, Satyam came to me with a hope that I can start it with him. And I was very skeptical. Then when I said yes, he took 2 months to vet my desire. He was just like, dude, are you sure you want to do this? You know it's going to be a struggle. You know your life is going to be, you know all this is going to happen. You know people, your friends are going to be doing masters. They're going to move ahead in life. We're probably not going to be earning any money.
Yeah.
All these, probing questions were asked. And I would do the same for him. I'd be like, dude, these are the deficiencies you have in your personality, in your work ethic. How do we cover it? How are you and I the right fit to do this?
Yeah.
So 4 months we deliberated. Then we realized our lives are not going anywhere. So because of Nidhi EIR, we were in the startup ecosystem. We were getting like these opportunities. You can apply for this funding, this grant, and this grant. We just started sending out applications. Next thing you know, we got 2 grants from IIT Bombay.
What were these grants?
One was called the Nidhi Prayas. And one was called the Meti Tai 2.0.
Okay.
So what we did was we took our 2 Nidhi EIR projects and we just applied for grants. And then we got 17 lakhs.
Okay.
Which was a lot more money than we'd ever seen in our lives.
Yeah.
Right? And like that, we were lucky because we could start a company without any financial burden on our parents or our community. So when we went to our parents were fully supportive. They're like, do it. It's fine. And
I have a question before you go ahead. The way of the startup ecosystem is to fundraise, at least what it looks like right now. And I'm very against that culture. And that's why I keep looking for these schemes and grants that are available by the government.
Right.
Do you think if someone wants to build a startup, I'm not talking about deep tech or a consumer brand, no differentiation. If you want to build a startup, do you think the government has enough to get you started in terms of programs and grants, incentive schemes?
So Anurag, in total, my company has generated over 1.1 crore in grant funding.
Okay, that is a lot.
That's a lot. And if we were smarter...
And this is non-dilutive funding.
Non-dilutive funding.
Okay.
And if we were smarter, then that's all the money we would have needed. So grants, you have to know how to maneuver through it.
Yeah.
But the beauty of grants is just trial and error. Sometimes you also don't have control. Like the panel that's overseeing your grant, like your application may know nothing and they might reject you. But that doesn't stop you from applying the next time.
Yeah.
Right?
And what are the things you should be aware about, careful about, if you were to tell a startup founder on this is exactly how we got grants and on the lines of that?
The first thing I tell them is be aware of the incubator trap. Be very, very careful when you're selecting an incubator. And as much as possible, try to stay as independent as possible.
Okay.
Because a lot of incubators are there to just suck the life out of you. We've been really lucky. We feel we're incubated in IIT Bombay, Sign IIT Bombay.
Yeah, Sign, I know.
One of the best decisions we've made. Because these guys have left us alone. When we need help, they come to us. When we make mistakes, they don't chide us and say, you should have done it this way. They help us figure it out because they know that we're not experts here.
Yeah.
We're not going to do everything right. But as long as they see that you are making incremental progress and you are getting better as a founder, they're perfectly fine. So but we've also been privy to predatory incubators. People who say, I want 10% of equity just to incubate. Please don't give out equity for free. It's a waste of your effort. But when it comes to fundraising, grants are incredible. So grants it's free money, not free money like it's equity free money.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's very restrictive. You have to spend that money in a certain way.
Yeah.
So when you're starting off, it's actually really good because it builds very strong fiscal discipline. You'll do your budgeting properly and all. But when you're growing your company, grants are the worst thing you can do.
Okay.
Because they're so restrictive that you don't have discretionary power over your funding. So when you start off, yes, there is more than enough money. You don't need to take a loan to start a tech company or any company, right?
Off the top of your head, before we go to the hospital, are there any grant names or programs that you can just dish out?
Nidhi Prayas, Meti Tide 2.0, Startup India Seed Scheme, BIRAC, BIG, K-Tech Elevate. There are, so I can, if you want, I can make an Excel sheet and you can share it with your followers.
Yeah.
That these things are there.
Oh, that would be lovely. We'll work on that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Alright, we
are at the hospital, and what are we doing here? We are meeting a patient.
Yes, we have come for a patient fitting.
And we are also meeting a doctor. His name is
Dr. Akshay.
Okay. He's an ortho here?
He's an orthopedic.
Okay.
If anybody breaks anything in Bangalore, please go to Dr. Akshay.
I got my surgery done through Dr. Bharat Kadadi.
Oh, I know him. Dude, I know him really well.
Ah, okay.
Okay,
yeah.
mad.
So Dr. Bharat and Dr. Akshay in Bangalore.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. When it's a hard day like this one, sugar really helps.
Nice. So the energy drinks now. We'll have some look up to keep me munching.
It's a common thing with engineers.
Yeah.
They are into energy drinks. Because even the guys yesterday, they have boxes of Red Bull. And I never got into I never take energy drinks.
For us, we got one coffee machine. We got like this big container of coffee powder. Dude, 5 days these guys finished it. I'm just like, what the f? Then at one of our team meetings, Naveen asked, like, do you guys want anything? Naveen puts his hand up, sir, can you please buy some better coffee?
What is this brew?
Bro, I bought the cheapest. After that, I was like, I'm not going to spend so much money on coffee the way these guys are consuming it.
So, which one are you getting right now?
Right now, I stopped buying coffee.
Okay.
So I used to buy some gold, okay? You know, Nescafe Gold.
Bro, that is too expensive.
It's too, I used to buy for myself. I used to keep it, I used to hide it. Naveen found my hiding place and started finishing my gold. But after that, I had it.
No, gold is too expensive.
Yeah.
So I have settled on. So I feel it's better than Nescafe. The red Nescafe. It's Continental.
Continental is good. It's cheap.
It's cheaper.
And it's, yeah.
It's sustainable.
Yeah.
It's it gives you a more runway.
That is true. Even this Tata is pretty good, but Tata is getting expensive again. Tata Grand.
Tata Grand, I have not tried it. I think for me, Continental works best, and they also have, I think, Extra now, which is a bit stronger coffee. That is the love and hate relationship, because I also love and hate Delhi.
You love it because it's home. You hate it because of what it's becoming.
How is it to see your home change so rapidly in 20 years?
To see, it's disgusting.
Okay.
See, I'll tell you the thing about Bangalore. It's required. It's great for a city to grow like this, right? But then
But
you have to,
not like this.
But not like this. You
Yeah.
have to look at sustainable growth, and that is the one thing. Every part of, if you look at old Bangalore, Jayanagar, Basavangudi, Banshankari, JP Nagar, that's it, South Bangalore.
Yeah.
Central Bangalore is there. You look at a newer area like Sahakar Nagar in Yelahanka. These areas have been planned out. So at least there's like good sewage, there's good drainage. These areas don't flood. But then you look at the wealth concentration of Bangalore that's in like Sarjapur, Marathahalli, HSR. Those areas are really trash because they've literally been developed to accommodate a growing population of the money bringer for Bangalore, that is techies, right? But it's not been planned. So basically the MLAs over there made a ton of money because there's such rapid development happening without any jurisdiction to say that this is the right way and this is the wrong way of doing things.
Yeah.
And that screws up a city. So now when you go to Marathahalli, it's a dust fest. And everybody who lives in Marathahalli hates it because it's just such a miserable place to live in. I've grown up in this area called Kamnali, right? Kamnali was also, it was a village like 20 years ago and now it's become a bustling suburb of Bangalore. But Kamnali is still better planned. But in the last 5 years, it's become like Indiranagar. All the best, like all your Bob's bars and local, everything is over there. And it's become a fest because it's just grown so exponentially. There's just there's no way of living sustainably there.
So Amartya, is this how your day looks like? That there are cases, patients need the casts and splints, and you get the request from the network of doctors you have, and then you just go and give the patients the attention and the casts they need.
Yeah, so I'd say 40% of my time during a week is spent doing this. I used to be office, like I used to spend most of my time in the office, but I've started getting out more primarily because I want to understand I want to
Business
see.
development side of things.
Yeah, dude, like, see, it's one thing, like, I'll make a splint and I'll send somebody to give it. But how do I optimize the process? How do I make it easier?
Yeah.
How can I see what the patient really requires? And the second thing is when I'm working with certain clinicians, like, those are my clinicians. So
Yeah.
I interact with them. So as I'm building a relationship, I want them to trust us.
Hmm.
So a lot of times I want to be the face of it.
Yeah.
Right? So at least like first 5 to 6 cases with the clinician, I make sure I go into it. So yeah, about 40% of my time is spent doing this.
And right now, if this is the case, I want to understand the kind of vertical responsibilities you have split among co-founders. So is this something I can also see Satyam doing, or is it strictly allocated to you?
No, it is split between the two of us. So there are 3 co-founders for Create Labs: Satya, me, and
Vamsi.
Dr. Vamsi. Yeah. And
Vamsi is the surname?
no, Vamsi Krishna. Krishna is the surname.
Okay.
Vamsi is his first name.
And before we get into the 3 co-founders and their vertical responsibilities, we haven't talked about Dr. Vamsi.
Right.
So how did he get into the picture?
So when Satyam and I were doing our thesis in the hospital in Manipal, we were assigned to Dr. Vamsi. So Vamsi was a second year post-grad orthopedic student,
Okay.
and we were 4th year engineering students. So Vamsi's project was on the evaluation of custom made prosthetics, and our project was a development of custom made prosthetics. So we helped him with his thesis and he helped us with our thesis. So we worked together. So for the first 6 months, right, that is Jan to May 2019, we started working together and we became really tight. We became really good friends because we realized that even though there's like a 4-year age gap or 3 or 4 year age gap between us, I think there's a lot of mutual respect that got built between us.
Yeah.
Where Vamsi saw the tech side of things and we saw the medical side of things, and then also like we share a lot of interest.
When you say tech, it's medical technology, right?
Yeah.
Not computer science or anything.
Everything. So
Okay.
Vamsi is actually a bit of a tech head.
Okay.
Very interesting. He loves staying up to date with all the latest technology. I think he's better than us at it. And he fondly says that if I wasn't a doctor, I would have definitely become a physicist.
Okay.
I don't know how good he would be,
Yeah.
but I think he's a great doctor. Yeah, so I think the most important thing is the 3 of us just really got along. And when we'd hang out, right, it wouldn't just be work.
Yeah.
We'd hang around, like once he would go cycling with me in Manipal, we'd catch up for drinks after work. We would go surfing together, go swimming together.
Yeah.
We ended up hanging out a lot. I think for Vamsi also it was a nice break from his constant orthopedic crowd, and for us we didn't have too many friends left in Manipal at that time because most of the people went out for internships. So it was nice to get along on that side as well.
That's, I'll tell you. So, there's a start, right? There's a start that floats around that 99% of startups shut down,
Yeah.
right? And then there's another start that 65% of those startups shut down because founders fight.
Yeah.
Okay? And it's a very interesting fact. And I'm grateful that nothing close to that has happened with my tech co-founder.
Right.
But I think there's a thing right here. If you meet your founder, who becomes a friend, or if your friend becomes a founder, co-founder, I think there's a very big difference there. And you also met your founders who became friends.
Absolutely.
And I think it was similar with me.
Yeah.
So the friendship developed around the dynamics this relationship should have
Yeah.
as professionals and as friends.
That's true.
And I think it gets more difficult when it is a friend, because then there's so much history.
Yeah, definitely.
And because in a scenario or in an argument, they could bring something from the past. That, bro, you also did this in school. you took my lunch. Now you're taking my equity.
That's a nice escalation.
Yeah. No, because what you said now, I really related to it. That you just became friends, and then it became more natural to exist.
Yeah. Yeah, so like I said, we never had any intention of starting a company. All three of us are accidental founders. Our initial intention was just that, like Satyam and my thing was like, okay, we've done this work, now let's try to commercialize it.
Yeah.
And with Vamsi coming in, so we pulled off. Vamsi was never interested in doing this Splink business with us. Okay. But the one thing he kept telling us is, he's like, guys, I believe in the team. I believe in you and Satyam. I believe in me wanting to be a part of this.
Yeah.
So he's like, I want to be a part of it. So we like, we have a good. And the thing is, we started, like you said, we were first work proximity associates.
Yeah.
And then we became friends. And that's why I think those boundaries were always easy to maintain. But you also brought up fights, right? I think fights are one of the most healthy things for a startup.
Yeah.
Because a fight is when you're at your most raw and you are like all fights happen for a reason. And a fight is a good test of a founder's relationships with each other.
Yeah.
If you're able to, I think we had this discussion before,
Yeah.
you need to be able to draw boundaries very well. And you need to respect what the other person is saying. Right? So now, of course, Vamsi is running a hospital in Vijayawada, so he's not involved in Create's day to day. But Satyam and I, we fight at least like 5 times a week. But we fight for good things, I'm like, I'm fighting with him like, bro, Satyam, why the f did you not update this dashboard?
Yeah.
He's fighting with me, dude, why hasn't this been dispatched as yet? And then the cool thing is, those fights convert into, okay, what can we do to make this better?
Yeah. How do I optimize this? Because
Yeah.
this is clearly a problem in the process. So there has to be a way to solve this for good.
Yeah. So we acknowledge the deficiencies in us individually. I think we let go of our egos a year into starting the company, because we were like, you're a we don't know what we're doing.
Yeah.
So it's just better to like acknowledge that we're idiots and just start afresh. So yeah, I would say if you can have good, honest fights. Like fights are like, like you've gone for a hectic workout, you wanted to die in the middle, but coming out of it, you're feeling like this was good.
Yeah.
God, this sounds like a toxic relationship therapy.
And I have a feeling, is Vamsi also an investor in the company?
Yeah, he invested.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because again, there's too much relatability here, because even my co-founder, so he tries to give as much time, but he also has a full-time job. Right. So he's currently footing the bill for our 2 employees and the expenses we have in the company.
Right.
And in that way, he's also an investor. He passively always is there. And that's why I had the feeling that Vamsi is also an investor. So
it's like an absentee parent, no? If you're not there physically for your child, you'll spend money on it.
Yeah. Not going to get into that. But talking of Vamsi coming on as an investor, was he one of the first people to do that? Or there were other?
No. When we were raising investment, so the first.
And when were we raising?
Started 23. So the first 2 years of Create Labs was just spent on grant money.
Yeah.
Then when we were actually looking at expanding our business and distribution into the market, we realized we need some real money.
Yeah.
Now when I say real money, it's because grant money is heavily regulated.
Yeah.
I don't have complete control over how I'm spending this money. But when I get investor money, the first thing is I'm getting key stakeholders to put their money into my company, which means I can also leverage these key stakeholders.
And second, I'm buying a company Mercedes.
Not yet. This WagonR.
This WagonR
Call
is...
it my...
Yeah.
Please cut that out. This is my company Mercedes. But yeah, you get money where, like, if I've raised 1 crore, nobody is really telling me how to spend that crore. I have to decide. So that's a lot of responsibility. But yeah, and most importantly, you're putting a valuation on your company. You are trying, now when a person puts a valuation for the first time, nobody really knows. Like, startup valuations are all, somebody will say, you're this segment, okay, use this multiplier.
It's just multipliers. That was that's exactly what I was about to say. That you are tech, okay, so 10x. 10x is the valuation, and okay, consumer brand, you are not getting.
This is something Satyam always says. He said, valuation is a negotiation. If you are able to negotiate that value with your investor, then that is your value. If today I'm a 10 crore company, tomorrow I raise money at 100 crores and somebody is willing to put in some X, even if let's say it's a money launderer, okay, they want to put some X amount of money at 100 crore valuation. yes, you are now a 100 crore company.
Yeah.
Nothing changes that.
But what do you think? Is that good? The more the valuation, the better?
It purely depends on the sector you're in, Anurag. So, I have been very conservative on valuation because my primary thing is I don't want to overvalue my company. So if you see, if you undervalue your company, you
Give up equity very
you're giving
fast.
up control, right? If you overvalue your company, then you are giving up credibility.
Okay.
And you have to strike a balance. And the thing is, there is no balance. It's always course correction. Maybe you'll undervalue, maybe you'll overvalue, maybe you're one of those lucky ones who hits the right spot.
Okay.
But the thing that you need to be aware of is generally in this segment what our companies value at. You need to be somewhere in the ballpark. Now, the first time we raised money, we raised at a 12 crore valuation.
How much did you raise?
We raised about 1.5 CR.
Okay.
So I'm really happy we didn't raise it at a 20 or a 25 crore valuation because our market conversion didn't reflect that. So if I raise a 20 crore valuation and because I wasn't able to make enough sales, it would have really affected my ability to raise more money. The second time I raised money was at a 15 CR valuation. So after
this was when?
This was last year, 24.
Okay.
So after about 1 year and 3 months of raising my first investment, I would have ideally wanted to raise it at about 20 or 25 CR valuation. But I realized I'm not able to capture my market effectively enough.
Yeah.
I still don't have my product market fit. As much potential as this product has in my belief, like I believe this product has potential, I'm not able to show it. Am I going to give some outrageous valuation? Let's say it's acceptable, but in my mind it's outrageous. So 20 crores is an acceptable valuation for a 3.5-4-year-old company working in this sphere. I just want to raise a bridge fund of about 1 crore. Okay? Or will I go
What is a bridge fund?
Bridge fund is like I need money to survive from this stage to this stage, so I'm not raising a lot of money and I'm not diluting a lot of equity.
Okay.
Just to,
go ahead.
Yeah, bridge the gap. So last year we realized we don't want to raise a lot of money, we just want a bridge fund. A bridge fund to ensure we get our product market fit solidified. After that we'll raise a lot of money.
And for this, do you go back to the same investors?
No, we don't.
Okay.
You can, but we didn't.
Okay.
The main reason is our first investors were our friends and families.
Okay.
So these guys were our mentors. When we went to our mentors telling them, guys, we want to raise this much money, they basically told us, don't bother going institutional, we have the money, we believe in you guys, we're going to put it in. So we were like, you know what, yeah, this is great, yeah. So we went friends and family. The second round, again, now the space I'm working in is not investor friendly because it's hardware, it's a consumable, there's no AI, there's limited tech, it's dhanda, so it's just pure sales. If you're not able to sell, nobody's going to invest. The problem with these sales is nobody wants to see incremental growth.
Okay.
Year on year, I'm growing 10%.
They want things to explode.
100%, 200%. They want a Fredo story. Fredo also has a very interesting story. We should get into that. No, wait. What
I was asking about 2024. You raised again at 15 crore valuation, and you raised how much?
1. Yeah.
And this was the last round you did.
Yeah.
Okay. And now you have hit break even in revenue.
No. We are looking to hit break even in about 5 months.
Okay, 5 months to break even. I'm sure this has a play of distribution.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
I'll tell you how you might be doing distribution. The end consumer does not know that it exists, right? But the end consumer did not know synthetic casts exist. Because when we grew up, we saw plasters.
Yep.
Those bulky plasters of gypsum.
Yeah.
Right? But then synthetic casts came into the play. And now when I got the injury, I knew synthetic cast is an option. I'm not getting that plaster, right? So what is the journey to reaching that stage where people know this is an option? That will be my second question. The first is, the distribution has to be done through doctors and hospitals, right?
So distribution was the mistake we made when we started. I want to talk about the synthetic first, if you don't mind.
Yeah, please.
We got in touch through our network to one of the people who started synthetic tape, plaster tape distribution in India in the 90s.
Yeah.
And he told us it took them 14 years to make it mainstream.
Okay.
So forget about product development cycles and all. Taking a product that was being sold outside, bringing it here and selling it took them 14 years. And even now, it is not the default choice.
It's not. Especially, I mean, in tier 1 cities, it might be.
Yeah.
Because it's a more recommended option and
Yes.
publicly seen option.
Yes.
But I think in villages, it's still plaster.
Still not. India still predominantly uses regular POP.
Hmm.
Right. I speak to my distributors about what is selling more. They're like, boss, we're still selling more of POP rolls rather than synthetic rolls.
But when you say distributors, who are these people? Like, what is this persona you're talking about?
Right. So when I say distributor, the person I'm mostly talking about are like people who stock a product and sell it to a hospital.
Okay.
Right. So
there's a middleman in between?
There's always a middleman.
Okay.
Why do you need a distributor for medical sales, be it devices, pharmaceuticals, etc.? Whenever you're working with a hospital or a B2B client, the first problem you have is vendor registration and negotiation.
Okay.
Right? You need to negotiate a rate with the B2B client. You need to negotiate a payment cycle. So is my credit period 30 days? That means I'll deliver the product today. Will I get paid in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days? Most guys have a credit period of 90 days. As a startup, you can't survive on a 90-day credit period.
Okay.
Because you have paid you have supplied the product. You need to get paid ASAP.
Yeah.
Right? Because you don't have enough liquid cash to sustain yourself for that duration. So that's when a distributor comes in. So I will now, I've gone to X hospital, they like my product, they want to stock it. Now if I have a distributor, the first thing is I don't have to register my product or my vendor.
Because they are registered.
Because they are registered.
Okay.
So through the distributor, that process becomes seamless. Second thing is, I don't have to worry too much about credit cycles. Because I'll negotiate with the distributor, boss, whatever clients you're getting, anything I sell through you, you pay me in 30 days. And the distributor will have his own credit cycles with the hospital. And they are fine with that. So that is where distributors come in. Right? When Satyam and I started the sales process, which was in 2023, we actually started trying to sell this product. We understood that the way medical device sales work is, I will do the sales and marketing work because I understand my product, and I need to find a distributor who is liaisoning with this hospital. And once I establish a demand, the distributor supplies it. Simple. So we went to different territories. The first thing we did was we got to distribute. We got the distributors interested. They decided, okay, I'll stock your product. Then we asked them, guys, which are the hospitals that you recommend we visit? So ideally, we wanted their best clients. We found out those clients. We met the doctors. They liked the product. We got it stocked in the hospitals. But then the product wasn't moving.
Okay.
People were buying it, but nobody was using it. And that's when we realized...
Why do you say that? Because when they buy it, why are they not using it?
So there's so if I'm trying to replace plaster cast, right, you have to understand how plaster inherently is used in the industry. Whether it's a synthetic casting tape or whether it's a regular plaster casting tape, you take it, you dip it in water, then you wrap it around the patient's hand, then you hold it for 5 to 10 minutes as it sets in place. That tape can be used for any part of the body, whether it's the hand, the leg, the torso, anything.
Okay.
And that is something that somebody is familiar with. If you're a doctor from MBBS, you see that. So it's not unfamiliar, right? It becomes very, very inherent and in their habits.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to do with our process, where we take this thermoplastic material, and you have specific materials for specific injuries, specific splints for specific injuries, and then you have to heat it and then mold it. That whole process of heating and molding became a big issue.
Yeah.
Because people, while they loved the end product, they weren't willing to do the work in between. They weren't willing to bridge the gap. Even once I've done 1 or 2 training sessions, it just wasn't easy enough for them to make.
There's a learning curve to it.
There's a learning curve. So what we realized was we were selling the product on the face value of the finished product, but people weren't sold on the journey, the product journey, right? Then what we started doing was, then we did like some 30-40 lakhs in sales. Then we had to do recalls from our distributors because after a year the product didn't move. Again, we went back to the drawing board. We were like, what are we doing wrong? Like, we don't understand this. People like it, people want it. Why are they not using it? It's just as simple as heating and molding it. Then we realized, one second, this thought of it's as simple as heating and molding it is only in our heads.
Yeah, because it's simple to you, not to them.
Because we made it.
Yeah.
Right? And when we show it to people, they also like, yeah, it's so simple. I can also do it. But when they actually have to start doing it,
without your presence,
it's not.
Yeah.
And at that age, with that much experience, the likelihood of them reverting to old habits is much higher.
Yeah, it's easier because hospitals are overrun.
Yeah, it's like saying, okay, when I'm stressed, I smoke.
Hmm.
It's not good for me, but I smoke because it helps me.
Yeah.
But instead, what's better for me is if I'm stressed, I should exercise.
Yeah.
What am I going to do? I'll go back to smoking because exercising is hard.
And
Right?
exercise takes longer.
It takes longer, although our process is much shorter. But I'll just go back, even though I won't do something that's better for me, and I know it's better for me, purely because the other thing is easier, and I still achieve my end result of feeling relaxed. So that is what we realized, that as a founder, we thought, because people say it's nice, we've achieved product market fit, but you have not. Product market fit means that your product, you are not pushing anymore, the market is pulling you. So
Your first sale is not product market fit.
Yeah.
It's not even your 10th. It's not even your 100th.
Yeah.
Unless the customer can't live without your product.
Yeah.
Unless it's a feeling, it's an emotional attachment. Unless there's a pull, like you said.
Absolutely.
Unless you feel the pull that you don't have enough supply.
Yeah.
And there is more demand. That is product market fit. Not your first sale.
That's what we are finally. We haven't achieved PMF properly yet, but we're feeling it. Like today, right? This doctor we went to visit for the sugar tongue splint. I'm feeling a product market fit coming through him because we've been in touch for about a month, and in the last 2 weeks he's given me almost 5 cases.
Okay.
Tomorrow will be the 5th. And the more he does his practice, the more he's constantly thinking, how can I use this product instead of plaster casts?
Because they think what's best for the patient, right?
Yeah, but also think about it this way: his convenience factor is ticked off.
Okay.
Because he calls me and I do the needful, and it's so seamless. Like even today, it happened
But
in
would
minutes.
things change if he has to do it?
That is the next step. So when I
Okay.
cultivate a client, that is how I cultivate them. The first thing is I need them to get hooked onto the product. I need them to be in a situation where they're like, okay, you know what? I want to use this for all my cases. And the only way I can get them to do that is when I have spent enough time with them, just getting them so used to their patients giving them good feedback, us generating good content, people calling them and asking them, can I get this product through you?
Making it seamless for the person who's going to recommend it.
Yes, you have to make it seamless. Then you take it to the next step. When this person is so, let's say you're creating a wall garden, right? So I have now put the first layer of bricks around that person. The second layer of bricks is, okay, you know what? Do it yourself. Why don't you give it a shot? Then,
I'm right here with you, but let's let you give it a try.
Absolutely. That's what we're doing in some hospitals now. So we realized that the product market fit can only be traced by mapping out the exact client journey. And our client that is important is not the patient right now.
It's the doctor.
It's the doctor.
Yeah.
It has to be made because we know the patient's life is better. So how do we know the patient's life is better? We pivoted from a product-based sales business to a service-based business.
Yes.
Right? So in a service, so basically in 20...
Because, don't want to cut you,
No,
but
please.
if this was a product-led business, you would be at the office.
I'd be in the office.
The reason we are in this car is because it's a service-led business.
It is a service-led business, yeah.
Okay, now go on.
So yeah, 23 and we realized
We have to make money.
We have to make money because we just spent so much of the money we had raised and we had nothing to show for it.
In manufacturing.
Yeah, in manufacturing. Yeah, I mean nothing to show for it. We had some sales, but it just wasn't enough.
Yeah.
So Satyam and I made a judgment call. We realized we were having some sales every month where doctors were calling us and saying, guys, can you just do this case for me? So we thought, okay, this looks interesting. Let's go and explore this. So from Jan 24 onwards, we pivoted to a service model. We called it SaaS, Splinting as a Service.
Okay.
That's a bad idea.
Yeah.
And then that exploded.
Yeah.
So we grew the sales. Every month we were doubling our sales almost. And it reached a point where we were doing about 200, 250 cases in a month.
Okay.
Which was quite insane. That was almost, we were like the second largest custom split operator in Bangalore.
And how much were the sales? If you can give me
Yeah,
that number.
I'd be happy to. So that's where things started screwing us over. We realized because we captured that much market because we were selling our products for a very cheap price. We were doing service sales at product sales prices. So at about, let's say 200 splints, we were making about 8 lakhs a month.
Okay, that's nothing.
That's nothing.
Yeah.
And we were spending about 15, 16.
And there's so much time of founders going into this.
Yeah.
Because it has to be, someone has to put a face to it.
Yeah, and
every time.
dude, most importantly, my team was dying. Because if I'm doing 200 splints, I'm doing 400 visits. 200 for assessments, 200 for fittings.
Yeah.
and my team just couldn't deal with it. Everything started cracking. And then again, we took a judgment call in November. We said, okay, we know that this product is great for patients. We know that doctors are recommending it. We are getting calls every day for people looking, but we're not able to scale, and we're still not able to make money. What are we doing wrong? Then a stroke of luck happened. And in this stroke of luck, we got 2 orders. One, these were government tenders that we won.
Okay.
We have one distributor who takes care of government sales. So one was in AIIMS Patna. We cracked a deal for.
I read this. I read about this. Yeah.
For about 1 lakh that we delivered in Jan. And the second one, we got a order through ESI Faridabad. Again, we won a tender through our distributor. And that was for about. Sorry.
I have one question. Let's just cross this intersection and deadlock.
Actually, I won't disclose the amount because I think those things are confidential.
No, that's fine.
But
I don't want to know about the tender amounts. I want to understand how did you find that these tenders were open?
Okay.
Yeah, and how did you apply for them?
We didn't do anything.
Okay. The distributors did?
It, yeah.
That's beautiful.
So we found a guy who loved the product to the level, oh my god, what an idiot, not this distributor, that auto guy.
So these 2 tenders happened by stroke of luck.
Yeah.
And then?
Yeah, so see, now we are looking more into tenders because it converted, right? So our distributor, we were basically like in the beginning, we were like, "Theek hai, kar lo, let's see what happens." After he converted, our eyes opened. The second tender we won was more money we made in 1 shot than in a quarter.
Okay.
Right? We're just like, we're looking, we're like, dude, what the hell? So sometimes, like you hear these things like you just call it divine providence or whatever. Intervention.
Yeah.
Sorry, yes.
Divine providence.
But even providence to some degree, right?
Yeah.
Where you have been putting in the work, something worked out somewhere, your eyes are not on it, but that's given you a sign for something else.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's about creating a demand.
Okay.
So I wouldn't say go looking for tenders. I'd say find a distributor who knows how to maneuver the system.
Okay.
That is very important because the government purchase process is so different from a corporate process. It takes its own time.
Yeah.
If I have an order for like, let's say 20 lakhs, in a private hospital, I'll have to hustle my way through that hospital for about 3-4 months to get that the demand done, right? Like demand, consumption, etc., continuous orders. They won't order 20 lakhs in 1 shot. Over 3 to 6 months, they'll utilize that amount. But for a government hospital, they'll order in 1 shot.
Okay.
And they'll use it for like a year. But it'll take me 6 to 8 months to get that order. So more important, you need to be patient and you need to find the right person to facilitate that because it is a very hectic, intense process of going, negotiating, creating a demand, finding the right contacts, and government things only work through contacts. Right? Even if you have a tender, you still need to know how to work that tender through. I won't get into too many details.
And I'll ask you a question that you may not have the answer for because it changes from industry to industry. But how do you find that one distributor? How did you find that distributor?
We lucked out. Lucked out. This guy was there at a conference. He saw our product when we had a stall, saw our product. He started talking to us. Satyam just loved his energy. I was like, who is this guy? But then Satyam had a hunch. He's like, just let him, like, we don't have anything to lose. So we were like, okay, you know what? Because imagine some dude walks up to you and says, "Hum crores ka karenge," and you're just like, bro, I'm not even selling 5 lakhs. What do you think crores?
Yeah.
But yeah, so when this tender came through, and Tauqib knows because Tauqib was Tauqib, say hi.
Tauqib is always there.
Yeah, he finally became a mechanical engineer again. I made him start hammering and riveting and stuff. We had a lot of production work to do, but we made money. And that made Satyam and I. So Satyam went to AIIMS Patna during this time, and when he was in AIIMS Patna, he's like, 4 months have passed. We've delivered the products. Has it been used? We went there. We realized it's not been used. Okay. It's not been used because the doctors are just like, guys, we saw your product, we liked it, but when we got it, we didn't realize how to use it. We're like, sir, the videos are here. Scan this QR code. IFUs are here all the day. They're like, oh, sorry, we didn't see it.
What do you mean by IFUs?
Instructions for use.
Okay.
Then they were like, Satyam, you know what? If you stay here for 1 week and show us, then we'll start using it. So Satyam stayed. And he immersed himself in the OPD. And they just kept giving us cases. That's how you saw that LinkedIn report. And now they use about 3 to 4 splints a week, even though like we know it should be about 10 to 15, but we're happy they're still using it. And now we're hoping for a second order to come in. When Satyam did that pilot study, we realized, okay, so they can use it themselves. So we know our product works for the patient, check. We know there's a demand, check. Through AIIMS Patna, we realized we know these guys can use it.
Yeah.
One more very important question got answered. A government hospital is buying and using this product, which means it's not unaffordable.
And it's not just government, it's AIIMS.
AIIMS, yeah. It's a central government,
Yeah.
this thing. So then after that, we now have shifted our eyes to what we call OEM sales, original equipment manufacturer. So it's purely product based. So now in a way, Anurag, we understood how distribution is supposed to work. Our product didn't have the market fit to utilize that distribution. We understood how the product is supposed to work through the service. Now we're trying to mesh the two. And we're running pilots with about 5 hospitals right now, where we're trying to push integrated usage. And we are creating case reports where certain splints are being used for certain injuries. So we're creating protocols for it. So for example, in Vamsi's hospital, MJ Naidu, they have completely stopped the use of plaster casts for something called distal radius fractures. Hey, the cops all stay. Oh, no helmet.
Yeah, he's printing challans.
I thought he was posting a story.
I hate cops.
Evening scenes.
At the railway tracks here with my boys.
My boys. Yeah, dude. So, what was I saying?
Vamsi's hospital has
for
distal.
They have created a protocol where they only use our splints for distal radius fractures now. So, distal radius is like, this is the injury you've had also is in the distal radius area. So, if you've had a fracture here, the protocol is set that instead of using plaster cast, they'll use our mitral splint for it. So like this, we're seeing changes happening. If you get Jones fractures or bimalleolar fractures in your foot and ankle area, they've replaced the plaster slab with our mitral splint. So this change is happening. What we realized was we just needed to be a little more mature in understanding how doctors work, what makes them tick, how can we make their lives easier, right? And what we realized was the best thing is, in the beginning, do it for them, let them like the product, then figure out a way that they can do it themselves. And then number 3, just push for more cases. So, okay, you've changed this protocol, now change this, now change this, now change this. Make them see reason in what you're doing and don't make it purely like, it's good, so you should use it. Nobody fucking works like that.
And are you targeting this sectorally, or are you paying attention to individual states in India at the same time?
We are...
Does not have to be all of the states, but are there multiple states you're targeting at the same time?
So we've established good relations with certain doctors, certain hospitals over the years. We are targeting what we call safety spots.
Okay.
So, or safe havens. Safe haven basically means that number 1, I have a benefactor. So in Vamsi's hospital, my investor Vamsi is there. There's one more hospital, it's called Vert, which is close to Vijayawada. There, one of the trustees...
That's where Satyam is, right?
Satyam's doing Vert. He does both MJ Naidu and Vert in the same circle. So in Vert, our benefactor is this other doctor over there who is a trustee and long-time user of our splints. So knows us really well, like family, right? Here in Bangalore, we are working with 2 hospitals. One hospital is where one of the doctors, we're actually going to one of his patients right now, loved what we are doing and was just really excited to work with us. And he'd been following us on Instagram for a while. So he was just like, guys, I really want to do it. So we love the energy from him. Another doctor has also been somebody who's been using our products for a long time. And when we told him, sir, there's a possibility you can do this in your hospital, he got very excited. So basically people who want to use it. We're trying to push there. So our goal is by the end of this quarter and next quarter, we will have 10 hospitals that are organically utilizing our product.
And we are going to the second case
we're going to the patient's house right now. So this patient has what we call a PCL injury. PCL stands for posterior cruciate ligament. And the braces in the market generally cost about 25 to 40k for this particular injury. We've made it for about 11k because I can actually charge more
around 40% of what they would spend.
I think the main thing is this guy's also got a bit of a sad story because his insurance didn't check out, and also we figured it's fine, man. It's Dr. Pratik's case. Let's do the best we can.
He's Satyam, right?
Yeah. He's Satyam. Oh wait, sorry, you're on my earphones. No wonder you're not hearing anything. Satyam, say something.
Say hi to Dr. Vamsi also.
Hi, hi, Dr. Vamsi.
Why is he hiding?
He's just coming from the bathroom.
No, this completes my video because technically all three co-founders are in the frame. Yeah.
Very happy. Thank you.
I want to talk about the experience I had with these two cases. The first one wasn't so. I don't want to compare injuries, but it wasn't that big of an injury.
Yeah.
And the guy we met right now has a very long
There's a long recovery cycle, yeah.
And this is where I saw the impact for the first time, actually. And even though we have been talking about it, but I saw it firsthand, and for the first time I felt that, okay, the impact is very big and it's not even close to what I was thinking. Because this guy would have been on bed rest for at least 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And now he can move.
Yeah.
He can move his joint.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be better even for the physiotherapy cycle, right?
Definitely, yeah.
So this was the first time today in this whole day that I felt that, okay, the impact is much larger than I was thinking. And thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for the invite and giving me this. And I want to also, I will make a video about, because you have already given me the mitral cast now. So I will make a separate video which will go on my Instagram. But now that we have concluded our day with Create Labs, what is that one or multiple messages you want to send across to whoever is watching and to the world?
Oh, wow. This is now I'm in a spot. Let me think.
No, please think.
So, I would say that technology isn't as inaccessible as we think it is.
Okay.
I mean, I'm going to stick to my domain that I keep seeing these videos floating around of like these 3D printed casts and all from Europe and US, just flooding the market. Doctors also keep sending it to me. But this technology is there, it's in our backyard. And there are many companies like us who are trying to make it available. So I'd say the first thing is support your local businesses.
Yeah.
If you see these kind of ideas and all, give it a shot. Startups is not all glamour, it's not all AI.
It's not at all close to that.
Yeah. There is an incredible amount of hustle. But I think it's just fueled by people like us who are there to just see this journey through. If anybody breaks their hand or anything, look out for your mitral cast. Reach out to us, we'd be happy to provide it to you guys. As we're expanding into hospitals and everything, if there's any investor watching this, we'd love to, if you all would be interested in investing in something like this. I think through this podcast, you have got a very raw glimpse of what our day-to-day looks like and what our dreams are ahead. So feel free to reach out to us through Anurag, of course. And I think more importantly, if somebody is looking at starting up, right, the most important thing is just embrace everything with the journey, the difficulties, the lack of money, the sleepless nights, sleeping on your friend's couch, whatever it may be. Embrace it all for the bigger picture. And I know I'm romanticizing it a bit, but it's worth it, man. I mean, if you have the opportunity to build something of your own, even if after a couple of years you have to shut it down, it's worth it, because it's not often that we get an opportunity to make an impact in our community. And do it. Whether you fail, whether you succeed, none of that matters. Just get out there and do it. And don't think too much. Take it one step at a time. And most importantly, network with people around you. Like, the only reason I am doing this podcast with Anurag right now is he popped up on my Instagram. I saw he had a cast and I was like, I'm going to message this guy. So
that was the most coincidental thing that could happen.
Yeah, and you were just like, I'm coming to Bangalore on these dates. And I was just like, dude, let's do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's my message. I hope I did a good... that's a weird thing. If I have to talk about what I'm working on, I will go on for ages. But if I need to ask something, that's when I just choke. And I'm like, okay.
I think by not asking, you attract the right people who could help.
That is true.
And I think just the hustle we have seen throughout, just the hustle I have personally seen throughout this day, I think that says more than you could.
Thank you.
And thank you, Tauqib.
Yeah.
Thank you for...
It was great meeting you, Anurag.
Yeah, and it was great meeting you. I wish you talk more.
Oh my, I learned this and learned.
Yeah. No, man, I think it's... we were discussing this yesterday, that there always has to be a room for conversation. And we got into politics, we got into religion, we got into a lot of things. And as long as we as individuals and as Indians keep talking, I think we have a very bright future.
Yeah, 100%. Thanks so much, Anurag,
Thank
for doing
you.
this.
Thank you. This was a wonderful day. Like always, thank you for watching.
Hello everyone, thank you so much for watching this video. I had a lot of fun recording this podcast with Amartya and got to learn so much from him. I hope the experience was the same for you. This is my idea with the series of podcasts where I want to invite successful entrepreneurs of India, share their stories, share their knowledge with you guys, and I want to keep doing it. So let me know in the comments below who else should I be inviting, and like always, thank you for watching.